Today, we are diving into one of the most audacious, most consequential acts of resistance in all of World War II, the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich. This is a story of almost unbelievable bravery, absolutely brutal retaliation, and a single moment that really did change the course of the war. So let's just jump right in. Picture this. It's a tight corner on a street in Prague. And there's this open-topped Mercedes, all banged up, tires shot out, shrapnel holes everywhere. Now, this is obviously no ordinary car crash. This is the immediate aftermath of a carefully planned ambush, and it has just sent the entire Nazi occupation into absolute chaos. You know, the craziest part is, the attack itself was a hair's breadth from total disaster. First, Józef Gabčík's submachine gun, it jams, at the worst possible moment. Nothing. So Heydrich, he actually orders his driver to stop, stands up to pull out his own pistol, and that's when Jan Kubiš throws a modified anti-tank grenade. It doesn't even land inside the car. It detonates against the side, sending a spray of metal and debris right into Heydrich. A wild firefight breaks out, and in all that confusion, the assassins just vanish. So, you have to ask yourself, who was the man in that car? Why would anyone risk absolutely everything to take him out? Well, this wasn't just some random officer. This was SS Obergruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich, one of the most feared men in the entire Nazi regime. His official title was Acting Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, but what that really meant was that he was the absolute dictator of the Czech lands. Hitler himself sent him there for one reason, to crush the Czech resistance. And let me tell you, he was chillingly, terrifyingly good at his job. Yeah, this was not just some bureaucrat pushing papers. I mean, just listen to the nicknames he earned through pure brutality. The Butcher of Prague, the Blonde Beast, the Hangman. And as if that wasn't enough, he was also a principal architect of the Holocaust. This guy was at the very top of the Nazi hierarchy of evil. His job in Prague was pretty simple and pretty brutal. First, terrorize the Czech people into total submission. Second, make sure that all the Czech factories kept pumping out weapons for the German army. And he was so confident, so arrogant, so sure that he'd already crushed any hint of resistance, that he would often drive around in an open-topped car. It turned out to be a fatal mistake. The mission to take him down had a code name. It's one that would become legendary in the history of wartime resistance, Operation Anthropoid. It's a kind of strange name, isn't it? Anthropoid. It actually comes from Greek, and it means having the form of a human. It's a technical, almost zoological term, but the point of the mission was simple, to prove that even the most monstrous, inhuman leaders were, in the end, just mortal men who could be brought down. Now, this operation really had two huge strategic goals. For the Czechoslovak government that was exiled in London, it was a desperate move to show their people back home that the fight wasn't over, and to prove to the Allies that they were still a legitimate force. And for the Allies themselves, it was a powerful statement. No Nazi, no matter how powerful or protected, was safe. And these were the men brave enough to take it on. On the left, Józef Gabčík, a Slovak, and on the right, Jan Kubiš, a Czech. They were Czechoslovak soldiers handpicked and secretly trained in Britain by the SOE, the Special Operations Executive. You know, that elite unit Churchill created for sabotage and chaos behind enemy lines. Their mission was basically a one-way ticket, parachute into their occupied homeland and pull off the impossible. So, Heydrich didn't die there on the streak. But when he eventually did, the Nazi response was swift, it was overwhelming, and it was, well, there's no other word for it but utterly barbaric. Heydrich actually lingered for 8 days. He eventually died of sepsis from the grenade fragments. Just 5 days after his death, the reprisals began. When Hitler heard the news, he was enraged. He demanded a wave of terror so brutal, it would make an example out of the entire Czech people. Think about this number for a second, 5,000. That's the estimated number of civilians murdered in retaliation. This wasn't a battle. This was a campaign of pure, calculated terror, all designed to break the will of an entire nation. The scale of it is just hard to comprehend. Over 13,000 people were arrested. This memorial at the Mauthausen concentration camp, it honors just some of the hundreds of Czech patriots, family members, people who helped the assassins, anyone even suspected of being involved, who were rounded up and executed. And then, there's what happened to the village of Lidice. The Nazis falsely linked the assassins to the town. It was a complete lie. And as punishment, they didn't just attack the village, they erased it from the face of the earth. All the men were shot on sight. The women were sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp. And of the 95 children taken from the village, 81 were later murdered in gas fans. Another village, Ležáky, suffered a similar fate. While all of this horror was unfolding, a massive manhunt was closing in on the assassins. And it all led to one final, tragic, and truly heroic climax. The paratroopers had found a hiding place, a refuge, down in the crypt of the Cathedral of St. Cyril and Methodius right there in Prague. But their location was given away. And the way it happened is just heartbreaking. One of their own fellow paratroopers, a man named Karl Czerta, betrayed them for a massive cash reward. So imagine the scene. They're surrounded, they're massively outgunned, there is zero hope of escape, and the traitor, Czerta himself, is outside calling for them to surrender. This was their defiant reply, shouted from inside the church right as the battle started. For 7 grueling hours, 7 hours, this handful of paratroopers, armed with just pistols, held off 750 elite SS soldiers. It's just unbelievable. They fought until they were down to their last bullets, and then they took their own lives to avoid being captured. This window, which is still scarred by bullets today, is a silent witness to their incredible last stand. So the assassins were dead. Thousands of innocent civilians have been murdered. It sounds like a complete failure, right? But here's the twist. Despite the horrific cost, the mission was not a failure. In fact, politically, it was a stunning success. See, the sheer barbarity of the Nazi reprisals, it shocked the world. It was so over the top that in response, Britain and France formally tore up the 1938 Munich Agreement. The infamous deal that had sacrificed Czechoslovakia to Hitler in the first place. And just like that, Czechoslovakia's legal standing as a sovereign nation and an ally was restored. This was the #1 goal of the government-in-exile. The operation became this massive symbol that resistance, even against impossible odds, was possible. Today, the heroes of Operation Anthropoid are revered in the Czech Republic. Memorials like this one, right on the wall of the cathedral, make sure that their sacrifice, and the sacrifice of the brave priests who sheltered them, is never, ever forgotten. Their story sent a message across all of occupied Europe. Tyranny will always be met with courage. And that brings us to the final, really difficult question. The operation achieved its political goals. It struck a huge symbolic blow against the Nazis. But the price was just immense. Thousands of innocent lives, and an entire village literally wiped off the map. So was it worth it? That's a question we still grapple with today.